Hello. Hey, gorgeous. Happy Tuesday. It's Bex here with another Tune Up Tuesday where I tune your heart to the frequency of love so that you may attract abundant, radiant, magnetic love, the love that your heart so desires. And today I'm chatting with you about this fear that we have of scaring good men away. This is inspired by a conversation that I had with one of my clients. I'll share just a little bit about her story later on in my chat here, but I wanted to just kind of back it up a little bit because, you know, I definitely know that this is not like a fear that maybe we're, oops, too many buttons. It's not a fear that we're necessarily like crying in our bed at night about. It's sort of this, I don't know, I find that it's more of a subtle fear. And it might come up after you have the experience of being ghosted. What is that? Most of you already know what that is. But that's like you're going out with somebody or you're talking with somebody and then they just, Kaiser Soze, disappear, right? So that's ghosting. Or it might also come up when you experience a slow fizzle. Like maybe you've met somebody either through writing or in person and you've got like a really great chemistry. You feel things like just really strongly on that first initial meeting. And then over time, like the conversation starts to wane, the interactions, the messages might get shorter, more like brief, less involved, more small talk, and then they disappear, right? So these things happen all the time. And they happen for many reasons. So I just want to preface this. The thing that I'm talking about today, this is not the only reason why men might disappear. But what I know for sure, though, is this idea of this particular aspect of masculine energy when it comes to relationships can cause big problems. And that aspect of masculine energy is this idea of future pacing, which is creating fantasy outcomes or otherwise shifting your actions and behaviors to fit the fantasy. So that's kind of like the timeline. The timeline starts with future pacing. Like we've met somebody, they're awesome. We've got a really great rapport with them. We go home and then we start thinking about like the next date and we start thinking about, oh gosh, well, I might have to move because I want to be closer to him, or he might have to move to me. And then next thing you know, we've got a ring on our finger, we're walking down the aisle and he hasn't even like written back after the first date saying, hey, I had a great time, let's go out again. Future pacing. This works in a lot of, backtracking, because it's totally helpful in a lot of areas of our life, like in planning and dreaming up, envisioning. Those are slightly different things, okay? Future pacing is like you're making up this fantasy outcome, this whole fantasy story of like how things are going to play out. All right, and the example that I gave you is just one example of many, because that might be a macro example, but it can also happen on a micro level that I'll talk about in just a second. But so basically what we're talking about is when we as women create expectations and then start maneuvering and behaving according to those expectations instead of like being in the flow and being present in the moment. Huh? Concepts, write that down. I will circle back to that. But so expectations of what, like expectations about a relationship or about a scenario before you have all the information needed to make a choice. Like, do you have all the information needed after you get one online message from a guy that like really lights you up? Do you have all the information that you need to future pace all the way down the aisle? I don't think so. You might have enough information to figure out if you want to spend 30 minutes having a coffee with this person, okay? So future pacing, creating expectations about the relationship before you have all the information. They could be expectations around what he might say, what he might do when you start doing some truth sharing, right? Like second, third date, when you guys start getting into like what my life is about and who I'm about and the truth of who I am. Like when we start thinking about those things in advance and thinking like, oh gosh, well, I better be ready if he reacts like this, or if I say this, I'm really nervous to say this because I'm afraid that he's going to think blah, 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 blank, 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 right? again, creating these expectations. And what all of that creates in us, in women, is this concern about how the date, the person might react or retract, right? So instead of just like coming all out and being like fully truthful in those scenarios, we start like withholding, and it gets weird. So I want to just share with you briefly about the inspiration for this. I have a client that I'm working with who is, she's met somebody really cool. She's really interested. It's not completely clear, like he's not making it totally obvious that he's pursuing her in a romantic way, but they're going on a trip together. And she, you know, because of her relationship history and because of just who she is and who she is becoming and the commitment that she's made to herself, she has specific boundaries around physical intimacy and like the timing in which she desires that to unfold with a romantic partner. And so she's like really wanting to communicate that boundary in advance and really speak her need right up front so there's no confusion, and that they go have a good trip and she's not in danger of that boundary be crossed in any way. Right? Totally legit. I feel her. I get it. Like, I've been in those situations before. I'm sure you may have too. However, the reason why this is thin ice in relationship zone, especially budding relationships, just getting to know each other. The reason why this is thin ice is because this is really masculine energy. What? Really? Yeah, it is. Let me outline how. Well, for one, is we're future pacing, we're creating those fantasy outcomes. So we're thinking about the future and we're like off in another land. We're controlling and planning, which is very masculine. Right? Now don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that this is good or bad. Like, controlling and planning is super useful in a lot of areas of our life. But in relationships, this is what I'm saying, is that in relationships it can be thin ice. And again, don't get me wrong that like she shouldn't have that boundary, because of course she should. But does it have to be communicated right up front before they've even like finalized the plans on the trip? That's my question, right? So again, coming back to this idea that this is masculine energy, is that she's way up in her head. She's overthinking about how it's going to play out, creating that expectation, trying to like control and plan how she's going to react when she shares something and then he reacts. It's like creating a movie script out of thin air. So those are the two big ways this is masculine energy. Now let's just flip the note sheet for a moment, and the feminine alternative ways of being that she can employ in this situation, that any of you can employ if you're in this situation of having fantasy outcomes and creating expectation. The thing is, we don't even know that we're doing it. We certainly don't know when we're engaging in it with another person. So feminine energy is not being in the future or like being held up in the past, but feminine energy is being in the present moment. Feminine energy is being accepting of what is. So not trying to plan or control or manipulate the future, and not like basing her today actions based on her history, but being really present with the person in front of her and making new conscious decisions in the very moment. Okay? The present moment, accepting what is, which is another element of feminine energy. So I've spoken to it just briefly, but like we're not trying to control or manipulate the future, but we're being in the present moment. We're living into the future, and then we're accepting of what is. Again, that doesn't mean that she's got to lay down and steamroll her boundary, but accepting what is, and also being in the present moment. And this third element of feminine energy, which is being fluid to circumstances, means that when that situation presents itself, that's her moment to act. That's her moment to speak her truth, to share her boundary, to draw her line in the sand, to communicate her needs. All of us, you know, I'm just using her as an example. All right. So just take a notice in your life, where in your dating life, in your love life, especially, where you are future pacing, where you are creating expectations out of thin air or based on past relationships. Because remember that our history does not dictate our destiny. You'll hear me say that over and over again. We are malleable. We are plasticine. We can grow and evolve and create new experiences in our life. And leaning into the feminine in our love life is one sure way to do that. So I hope that you have found this helpful. And listen, if you struggle with this, if you find that you are driven, ambitious, a go-getter, you got all the things that you have dreamt of in your life except this loving relationship, chances are you might be living in your masculine energy. You might just be like rocking that masculine energy, which is great, except for when it comes to attracting a masculine man, a man who wants to take the lead, who wants to protect and provide, take charge. And again, not getting into like traditional roles, but just biological drivers. So if this is resonating with you, and if this is something that's been a struggle for you, listen, I've got some opportunities on the calendar to work with me. I've got 3 spots open in my private practice right now. So if you've been shopping around for a love coach, if you have at least been up against the seams of your experience, is what I like to call it, when we outgrow our own self and we have not yet iterated into the new version of ourselves. If this is something that you really resonate with and would like some support with, I will drop a link in the comments below where you can apply to book a call with me. We'll chat about what's happening in your love life, and we'll figure out if this is the right next step for you. So I love you so much. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, a wonderful week. And as always, I am here and willing, open, happy to answer your questions. You can shoot me a message here on Facebook, or you can drop a link in the comments on YouTube, or you can email me at bex@bexburtoncoaching.com. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you here again next Tuesday for another tune-up. Bye.